Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and variations thereupon. My name is Helicopter, and welcome back to my channel. I have bells. Oh, my life, as it turns out, is not interesting enough to sustain a daily vlog. I'm still gonna do it. I'm still gonna put up videos that could be considered vlog format every day on my channel. That's my goal. But these sort of like walk around doing cool shit vlogs that I've been doing aren't sustainable for me because I don't do enough cool shit. So what do? Well, I have to be like any other fucking YouTuber and make content interesting from home. So that's what I'm going to do. So I was thinking to myself, all right, well, yesterday I'd mentioned story time, right? So I was like, all right, well, let me tell a story. And I was thinking about stories from my life, and I was like, you know what? Wait a minute. It's Halloween time, right? It's spooky time. Let me tell a spooky story. It's a spooky kabuki story. And so it was like, all right, well, what spooky story do I want to tell? Like a classic spookum story? No, everybody's heard those. What about a creepypasta? Well, everybody's done those. So I was like, well, let me make my own story. Make my own creepypasta from scratch. Which I know that's not how it works. Creepypastas are kind of passed around and they build up their own mythology. But I was like, fuck it. Let me, follow that sort of format, that sort of like familiar feeling of like stories like Slender and The Rake and like things like that. So I was like, all right, let me come up with my own spooky. So I made my own spooky pasta. But I was like, all right, I know the internet. I know it's hard as fuck to be original on the internet. So I was like, let me background check this. And I, like to compare it to other things. And so I did start comparing it to other things and, to see if it had popped up in creepypastas before, right? Like the exact, like, story terminology, the creature itself, like all the things. And to my surprise, it didn't show up in creepypastas, but I did get search results back using the same terminology. Now, here's where it gets weird. My whole life I've been a bullshit artist, right? Like I've been a liar and an exaggerator and a performer. Like when I was a kid, I went whale watching with my family, and there were some porpoises off the side of the boat, and I was like, oh, they touched my hand. And then they were like, yeah, because I would just lie and make shit up just to be more interesting. Something I still struggle with, just the sort of exaggeration and bullshit artistry of me to become more interesting because I'm afraid of not being interesting. But a weird thing happened as a result of that because I would bullshit so often and for so long that eventually people would start asking, questions with answers. Not like my opinions or my stories. It was questions with answers. And they would ask them and I would answer them without knowing the answer. I would just bullshit out, something that sounded feasible. And they would check it because they'd be like, I don't believe you. And then with reason, I was a liar. And it would turn out to be correct, as though I was like tapped into something that was feeding me the answers. And I got that feeling again recently when I was checking this story. And I was looking up the story and, like my story to see if it was like, if it showed up anywhere, and it did. And I was like, all right, but it wasn't how I expected it. I thought I would be unoriginal and like, it would show up in like a fucking creepypasta called whatever, and like just, I would have like somehow picked it up and it would just like be bullshit on the page and like be useless to me. But it didn't. It showed up in like old documents, like scans of PDFs and stuff like that have been like transcribed, and like web pages like this PDF of like demonology by King James, and like, sort of books of shadows from like witchcraft and paganism, and sort of correspondences between colonialists talking about like Native American tribes and mythologies, things they're learning. And it's weird. It's very weird. Just like old, and then like new stuff too. Like it would show up in like blog posts about people and it was like very vivid and very clearly what I had written, as though I was like describing something into existence, or describing something that existed without knowing it did. Anyway, it's all bullshit. I'm just kind of like getting in my head. I don't write creepy things often, and so it kind of got to me a little bit. Yeah, but anyway, I'm going to read this spooky pasta now. That I wrote. That is ostensibly original, and could be based on reality. So let's dive into that. So cue spooky graveyard footage. Maybe like a wolf howl. On to the story. In October of 2013, I was a college student. I was studying abnormal psychology at New York University. I was a good student, although had I spent more time with my studies and less time with my girlfriend Vanessa, I would probably have been doing much better. Between our near constant canoodling and my propensity for partying, I was holding myself back from really being my best. However, it was now my senior year, and Vanessa had moved on to graduate school at Columbia Law, and I was left finishing my degree with the promise of going to Harvard Medical next year. With my sudden and crippling isolation, I elected to really knuckle down and focus on my senior thesis, a study in religion-based psychological phenomena. In layman's terms, a study in why people act like and believe that they are possessed. As part of my research, I was on an observation team of students at the Psych Center at Columbia. It was an easy train ride away, and my girlfriend was often there to see me. My fascination with a particular patient grew immensely during my time there. Over the summer, a woman named Isabella was admitted with abnormal behavior, violent outbursts, nonsensical speech, and bouts of extreme activity, often characterized by surprising strength and speed. At first, they thought it was drugs. Amphetamines like crystal meth and dissociative stimulants like PCP often caused these symptoms, but as the behavior continued well past the usual detox time, that theory was dropped. As I continued to observe the patient, I began to develop my own hypotheses about her. Her eyes looked almost feral. Her nose and lips often caked with blood or bleeding. Her face pale, and her limbs covered in self-inflicted scratches. Most days she is sedated for her own safety, but that day she was not. She was flailing around, flipping and turning, tugging at her restraints, her black hair a tangled mess, her tan skin dripping with sweat, and her mouth foaming with blood. I could tell she was beautiful. It seemed like she was once a good person. I asked the nurse to administer a smaller dose of the sedative so I could talk with her. He complied on the caveat that I be quick. I was not. I entered the room and I could hear Isabella screaming in English and Spanish, in other words I couldn't quite make out. Probably gibberish. I made a note of that. I watched as the nurse administered the sedative, a strong antipsychotic medication and tranquilizer. She began to settle down, her movements much more sluggish and slow. I noticed the heavy-duty restraints they were using, all leather and metal chains. They looked like something out of the 1800s, something found in a Dickensian lunatic asylum, not a prestigious 21st century medical center in New York City. I asked the nurse as he was leaving why they were using them. "She broke the normal ones," he said. "We had to dig these out of the archives. I feel bad, but it's for her own safety." And then he walked out, leaving me alone with the sick woman. "Isabella," I said, "can you hear me?" She spat at me. A viscous glob of blood landed on my shirt. "Okay," I said. "I'll take that as a yes." I rummaged through my notes, a copy of her chart, medications, blood work, psychoanalytical notes. Evidently, she had moments of clarity. I was hoping for one. "Can you tell me how you feel?" I asked, sheepish with inexperience. "I feel great, honey," she said, almost sensually. "That's good," I said, making a note. "Who the fuck are you, new blood?" she asked. Of course, sorry. I'm a student. My name is Claire. I've been observing you for a couple of months now," I explained. "I know, baby doll. I've seen you peeking in on me. You like watching me all tied up, helpless. It gets you wet, doesn't it? She started shaking her breasts at me. No, ma'am, I'm simply conducting a bullshit, baby. I can see inside that fucked up little head of yours. All those nasty, kinky things you do. Ropes and cuffs and candle wax. The way you tie her up. The way you like to fuck Vanessa. She grinned and blood poured out of her mouth. Excuse me? I was shaking. How did she know Vanessa's name? Don't be scared, baby. She was scared too. Who was scared? I asked, no longer taking notes. Isabella. Ma'am, you are Isabella. I picked up my pen to write down the possibility of divergent identity disorder, maybe some sort of schism. What are you writing, whore? She shouted. I looked up in a fright. I'm taking notes on your responses. A noticeable waver lived in my voice, my hand starting to tremble. You know, you're really bad at this. I'm trying to learn how. You're trying to exploit me to prove I'm some kind of aberration of human psychology. I'm not. I'm just trying to do what I want to do. What do you want to do? I want to help people. People like you. She smiled. A comforting energy was coming off of her. I felt towards her a sort of attraction, like she was a lover, as though I was talking to Vanessa. Do you want me? What? You feel like I'm your lover. Do you want to fuck me? I'm already tied up. She licked her bloodied lips. Ma'am, you're sick. I can't. Can't or won't, lover girl. Enough. This is ridiculous, I said, beginning to pack my things. I leaned down to place my notebook in its bag and to sling it over my shoulder. As I looked up, she wasn't in her bed. My stomach turned. I darted my head around the room, trying to find her. Then I felt a drip of blood land on my face from above. I looked up and saw her suspended against the roof, facing me, eyes wide and smiling. She opened her mouth and let out a gut-wrenching scream, sounding partly human, partly animal, partly man, partly woman. She fell from the roof onto me, pinning me to the floor. She then put her lips against mine and kissed me. Blood crusting her lips scratched and grew sticky as new blood poured into my mouth from hers. I felt my heart racing in my chest, and then everything went black. I came to in the hospital bed down the hall, my mouth tasting of blood, my head feeling as though it were split in half. The nurse from before came in. "Oh, good. You're up," he said, handing me some mouthwash. "This is why we always fully sedate her." He pulled out a pen light and began doing some basic exams on me. "What the fuck happened in there?" I asked. "Not sure, but she did a number on you. Must have taken a fancy to you. We heard the scream and found her on top of you making out with your unconscious body. She was about to, well, venture downward when we grabbed her and sedated her." My eyes bulged at the news. She tried to... "It's best not to think about it, Claire," he said. "Claire!" Vanessa ran into the room, all blonde hair and professional attire. "Oh my God, Claire, are you okay? What happened?" "I'm okay. That crazy woman tried to... I started to cry. "It's okay, honey. I'm here. She hugged me, and I laid back. She laid with me in bed all night. I was discharged in the morning and started walking back towards the subway to my dorm at NYU. Vanessa came with me. I was discharged in the morning and started walking back towards the subway to my dorm at NYU. Vanessa came with me. "Honest, I'll be okay. I just need to get some rest in my own bed, maybe a bite to eat, and I'll be fine. Nothing happened. It's really okay." I said, trying to calm Vanessa down. Are you fucking kidding me? Nothing about what happened is okay. You were raped, she shouted. Shh, please, you're making a scene. I wasn't raped. I was just attacked. Seriously, nothing happened. It was a close call, and luckily that nurse saved me. Claire, I'm saying this because I love you. You should talk about it. You need to get through this. I won't leave you alone right now. Get off my back, cunt! I shouted. She froze in her tracks. I continued walking before it hit me. What I'd just said. I turned around. Vanessa, I'm sorry. I don't know why It's okay. If you need to be alone right now, I'll leave you be. She turned away and started to cry. Vanessa! I shouted after her, but she walked off, shoulders hunched. I sighed and walked off. Upon returning to my dorm, I locked the door and closed the blinds. I elected to sit in the dark for a while. I lit a cigarette despite it being against the rules, and I sat, illuminated only by the orange glow of my smoking. I felt something in the room with me, probably just nerves. Then I felt a warm drop of blood hit my forehead. I looked up and only saw the ceiling. I laid back in bed, snuffed out the cigarette. I shut my eyes, and I fell asleep. I dreamed I was in the room with Isabella again. She was unrestrained and smiling at me, just standing and smiling. I was terrified. The room was dark, illuminated only by the glow of the city outside the windows, the bars on the windows casting long shadows in the room. She started humming. I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. I was breathless in terror. She started to list from side to side. I felt compelled to move with her. She smiled at this, almost bashful, like it were a game, or as though she were proud of me. She started to vocalize with her humming. Leave your weakness all behind. Let my beauty join with thine. She can help to set you free. Be the one you're meant to be. You can resist, suffer pain, but all her power still remains. Your darkest wish and vile dreams shall be your passion and her scheme. So dare ye not, unless thou wish, commit your soul in blasphemed kiss. She hummed again, the sound echoing through my head. I hummed along. Like a lullaby in a dream. In a dream. I was dreaming. I awoke to find it was the middle of the night. I checked the time. It was almost midnight. Jesus, had I almost slept for 13 hours? I'd missed 15 calls from Vanessa. I called back. I didn't get an answer. My stomach growled. I looked across the room to see Claire sitting at her desk. Do you want to get something to eat? I asked. Sure thing, Claire, she said. I put on my shoes and my coat and opened the door. She walked with me, right behind me as always. I walked to the local bodega and got a sandwich. I couldn't pay. Claire showed him our knife. He gave it to us for free. Nice man. We walked back to our room. I got a call from Vanessa. I handed my phone to Claire. Hey, Claire said. Hey yourself, Vanessa said. Where have you been all day? Why don't you come over here and find out? Claire said. Is that an order? She asked playfully. You bet it is, babe, Claire replied before hanging up. Are we ready for that? I asked. Ready for what? Sex? Claire replied. Of course we are. It's us we're talking about. Later that night, when I finished my sandwich, we heard a knock at the door. I'll get it, I said, before getting up to answer the door. I opened the door. On the other side was Vanessa in a trench coat. She opened it up, revealing she was naked underneath. She came halfway across Manhattan dressed like that. I closed the door behind her and stripped the coat off of her. I locked the door. We began to kiss, passionately, when I heard Claire behind me speak. You two are so cute, she said. Thanks. For what? Vanessa said, stopping. Oh, no, not you, I said. Who, then? Vanessa said. Duh, my roommate, I said. She's right there, I said, pointing at Claire. Claire, you don't have a roommate, she said, staring right at who I was pointing to. Rude, I said with a smile, thinking she was just kidding around. Claire was not happy. Very funny, babe, but can we just get down to business? The way you yelled at me earlier was fucked up, but it kind of turned me on, Vanessa said. Sure, babe. Can Claire join us? I asked. Okay, wait, she said, pushing me off of her. What's going on? Are you playing a game or something? What are you talking about? I asked. Claire, my roommate. Honey, you are Claire. You don't have a roommate. What are you saying? Claire was upset, standing right in front of us. She was visibly angry, blood pouring out of her lip. Claire was upset, standing right in front of us. She was visibly angry, blood pouring out of her lips, sweating, her hair a tangled mess. Wait. Van? I said, trembling and starting. Van? I said, trembling and staring at myself in front of me. What, babe? You're scaring me, she said, starting to cry. My other self was wielding the knife. She held it to my throat and put a finger to her mouth. She dragged it across her throat. There was a knock at the door. Hello, open up. This is the NYPD. Is this Miss Claire Stevens' room? My other self was dripping with blood and sweat, her eyes wide and feral. Claire, what the fuck is going on? Vanessa asked. I whispered. My other self was glaring now. I felt the blade on my neck start to pierce skin. Claire, your neck, it's bleeding. I whimpered out. Open up in there, we can hear you. You're wanted for armed robbery. Help! I screamed, feeling the knife drag across my throat, slitting it. Oh my God! Vanessa screamed as blood poured out of my inexplicably slit throat. The knife fell to the floor. The cops kicked the door down and rushed in with guns drawn. They aimed at Van and then rushed in to pinch my neck closed. I came to in a hospital bed. The nurse from the incident walked in. Well, Miss Stevens, we have got to stop running into each other here. He grinned a little to try to lighten up the mood. What? What happened? Your girl said your throat was cut. She couldn't say how. Police are calling it a suicide attempt. Apparently you robbed a man at knife point. They found the knife covered in your blood. I told them what happened yesterday. Might reduce the charges considering your state of mind and that you didn't really hurt nobody but yourself. But what happened to... Ah! My voice was raspy and stopped from the pain of talking. Claire, your vocal cords were cut. I'm afraid you won't ever be able to speak again. I'm sorry. I'll get you some water, he said, and then walked out. I got a reduced sentence, 90 days public service. I served my time and finished up my degree. I've never seen that thing again, but she still hums to me. I think the only reason she doesn't still have a hold of me is because I can't hum back.